basically, definitionally, has success conditions for whether it represents the world correctly or incorrectly in respect of P.
Yeah, that seems right to me. So, are you just fine with saying that, like, God's thoughts that, like, serve the purpose of propositions are just, like, analogical? Like, you're predicating analogical in the fact that you're calling them thoughts? Because, like, every thought we're acquainted with has aboutness, but, like, these thoughts don't have aboutness or whatever?
Well, I mean, God, like, again, in this view, really what we're talking about are, like, exemplars or prototype ideas, right? So in God's mind. Now, yeah, the resemblance. Now, it's not like there's no diversity within God, real diversity within God, right? So for us, two thoughts would be too distinct from each other. You know, in God, obviously, there can't be such a distinction because of his simplicity. But then second, I mean, another respect in which they're analogical is that God's thought is like a higher on the chain of being than the thing it's about. So, like, Millith is contained within God's conception of Millith in a way that makes God's conception of Millith like the right sort of thing from which a Millith can proceed as like a faint, pale imitation, you know? Like, what makes you Millith is the resemblance that you have to God's conception of the perfect Millith. Now, obviously that's very different from creaturely thoughts, right? Where creaturely thoughts are even more impotent than creaturely entities that have a, like, actuality. Because, like, my thought of Millith, like, doesn't have the generative power to bring about a Millith, you know? It's actually, in fact, like, way less cool than a full real Millith. It doesn't even accurately, fully convey Millithness. So creaturely thoughts are, like, far, far weaker expressions of being than divine thoughts. But, like, the divine thoughts, like, are said to, like, eminently contain the creatures they're about. So, like, we just try to understand or grasp or apprehend, like, some aspects of creatures. Meanwhile, like, God's Millith thought is more Millith than Millith.
This is actually last thing, and I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I don't mind. I mean, other people may.
No, I know. I just won't let other people talk in the room. Do you think there's any univocal predication about God?
Well, it depends on what you mean, because in a technical sense, no, right? Which is what Aquinas is saying. But what he really means by that is just God is in a different genus, you know, than anything else. And so, like, the sense in which God is said to exist is different than the sense in which creatures are said to exist. And so, therefore, basically anything that's predicated of God has to be analogical, because anytime you're making a predication across genuses, there's going to be, you can never do so univocally.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, no problem.
So something that I'm a little bit confused about with propositions is there's like all these mysteries about it, but when I just think about it intuitively, it seems not mysterious to say, hey, like, there's a hypothetical state of the world that, like, might be the way the world is or might not be the way the world is. And then, like, I mean, what is that ontological state of that hypothetical state of the world? I mean, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, a description. It's just like a list of ways the world. It's just like literally just a description of a world state. I don't know. That feels like not mysterious to me. So what am I missing?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is just based off of this idea that's like, if we ever assert, you know, what is it that your thought's conveying that my thought's also conveying, this proposition? And then we ask, oh yeah, we're both conveying the same proposition. And then it's like, okay, what is that? And then basically whenever you try to tell me which thing in reality it is, that's when basically people can start debating, right? So if you start talking about a world state, right? Well, if my proposition is true and actually refers to a world state of the actual world, great, that's really easy, right? Because we all believe in those already. But then when my proposition represents a world state that's not actual, right? So it's merely possible, right? In this case, then we're like, okay, what in the heck is a possible world state? Like, where is that? Well, can I go? Will I find it in the moon? Like at the Louvre? Where do I find it? And then people start giving different answers to that question. That's where the controversy is going to arise. Is what is it? Is it just a thing that exists outside of space and time? So it's an abstract entity, Is it, and is that just all possible worlds? Is that what we're conveying? And so these are aspects of possible worlds, and these are abstract, ethereal possible worlds. Or you could go real crazy like David Lewis and be like, no, like, possible worlds are just like the actual world, except actual is just like around here, but they're just as concrete and real as this.
Yeah.
Just for those people that happen to reside there, we just don't happen to reside there. So you can go crazy like that. Then you can start telling other stories where you're like, no, guys, you're going nuts because you're way too committed to this, like, if we say something like there exists P, then there has to be some concrete entity P out in the world that we're committed to actually existing. But really, when we're saying here's a possible world, really what we're doing is actually this like parenthetical statement that's like here's an aspect of actual things, Or it's just like an artifact of our language, or it's a fiction that we're playing with. It's a useful fiction. So you see all those different answers to that question that people can give, and that's where the mystery is, or the debate comes about.
Yeah. I mean, why, if I say that there's a description, a hypothetical description, do I need to be ontologically committed to anything? It seems like I could just say, like, listen, what I gave is a list of hypothetical properties. There's a dog, and he's got white fur, and then if you are a thing, that has, those success.
No, but then there comes the question. So you're saying what makes what you're saying true? That there are these hypothetical properties, and these facts are true about those hypothetical properties. And I'm asking, well, what the heck is a hypothetical property?
It's just like a verbal description of a state of affairs, or I just feel like descriptions of things are not too mysterious. Like I can describe. Hey,
well, no, but here's the problem: is just when you're asked to basically go beyond just saying the thing that we're inquiring about, like just using the term that refers to it, and then you're like, yeah, but what is the thing in reality that you're referring to, that you're like informing us about, that makes what you're saying true? That's where the controversy arises. So there's something informative about what you're telling us, right? There's something about the world that really is true of the world that I didn't know before, that I'm learning when you bring this to my attention. And the question is, what aspect of reality is that? Because with like tables and chairs and particle colliders and stuff like that, it's more straightforward. You can go bump into them, right?
Yeah.
But then when you start talking about things that are like more abstract and immaterial, there starts to be more controversy where you're like, is it just that they're exactly the same as like physical things, except they just don't have the properties that let you bump into them? Or is there some sense in which they're like, they supervene on the physical, or like are fully grounded in the physical in a way where they're sort of just like really entirely derivative, or they're sort of like different ways of speaking that help you convey aspects of physical things? Or is it, no, what you're saying, like, this is purely a mental construct that we're sort of imposing on reality, but isn't telling us anything about the world, over and above just this is a useful way to think about the world to help focus attention or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have this intuition that this is my intuition of how it works. You got the world and how it is, and then you can like label the ways the world is. And then you can ask, hey, does like this part of does our universe have this, and this label that I've already invented? And then just find out if that's true.
Yeah, but there's a thing about reality that makes it fitting or not fitting to say things like, if Ethan had stayed home, he would have been hungry. Right? So there's something about the world that makes that true, right? But it's not the actual physical, events that unfolded. Because what did in fact happen when Ethan went off to the restaurant and ate McDonald's and was full, that's not sufficient to tell you what would have happened had Ethan stayed home, right? So then when I ask, what is it that makes that counterfactual claim true? Like, what is the further fact about reality that's being conveyed to me? Because it can't be about what actually happened, right? So then a thought you could have is, oh, well, there's possible worlds, and those possible worlds, it's facts about those that I'm conveying. So there's certain possible worlds that are similar to the actual world, but they only differ in this one respect that Ethan stayed home. And the ones that are most similar, when Ethan stays home, but they're very similar, he's hungry. And that's what I'm conveying. Or another approach would just be like, no, like, there are certain physical laws and those physical laws tell us, that if this contingent event had instead gone this other way, and if we had played the tape forward, then this definitely would have happened, or almost certainly would have happened, or what have you, right? And so then, but anyways, so people are asking to provide stories about what makes this thing you're saying true.
Yeah. Well, I feel like what makes the thing true is just how the world is.
Yeah, but that's not helpful.
But then, like, what is it that is like the what is the ontological status of a description of how the world is? Is like, I don't know. Like, we have word meanings, and word meanings convey states of the world. So I don't know. It's just like.
Okay, but so again, that's not helpful, because so there's the way the world is. Yes, that is true, but it's not informative, right? Because the question that's being posed is like, what aspect of the way the world is, right? What is the feature? What is the thing that's constitutive of the way the world is that this is picking out, right? So like, if I told you like, this glass is 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I ask you, oh, what makes that true? If you told me the way the world is, that wouldn't be helpful, right? But if you told me, oh, there's this much kinetic energy and these particles are moving this fast, okay, that's moving forward in terms of what that temperature is conveying to me about how the world is, fundamentally, right? So if you see the difference between those answers to that same question, what is being conveyed about the way the world is when I say this mug is 105 degrees Fahrenheit? If you can see that that's just because that's the way the world is. That's not helpful. But telling me, oh, it's about kinetic motion, okay, that's more helpful.
I just feel like there's lots of metaphysical baggage here, and we can get a lot off the ground by just saying there's a way the world is. There's a way that our language can be used to describe the ways the world is. There's ways that our thoughts can express content about how the world is, and then you don't need stuff over and above the world is and our representations about the world is. And I feel like everything, like there's a lot of
but there's a question.
Epicycles.
But that's not. I mean, so nothing you've said. None of those things. Everybody already agrees that those things are real, and that they're useful, and that most people can bypass asking about the metaphysical questions, right? And just get around in the world perfectly fine. Like, you don't need to be an expert on what causation is in order to use causal reasoning in your day-to-day life. in a way that's sufficient for most everyday tasks that you have. But that doesn't mean that it's not interesting to pose the question, when we say X causes Y, what is it that we're communicating about the relationship between X and Y? Right? So just the fact that something's functionally adequate for most everyday purposes doesn't tell you that there's not something interesting that can be learned by asking about the underpinnings of it.
No, I agree with that.
And then if a person is coming to you and saying, when you're making these claims about propositions or counterfactuals or mathematical objects or whatever, there is something interesting and informative that we can learn by debating about what that's communicating about the nature of reality.
I mean, it might be helpful to be concrete about this and just say, okay, let's just take a given proposition. Sam lives in New York State. Okay, there's a proposition. Okay, well, it could be true, it could be false. I could be, actually in the Bahamas right now. I could be lying to you all. It could be, true. No, it happens to be true that I do live in New York State right now. And now, what is the status of the that proposition that I mean, there's a sense in which, there's a guy, Sam, and he's in New York State. That's one reality. And there's another reality, which is our language is able to express representations of where things are. And it feels like you have to either ask about the map or the territory. And if you're asking about some third thing, you're lost in the sauce.
Well, no, but so there's the problem, which is, so there's what's being represented, right? Which is the world. There's the way you're representing it, which is the mental representation that exists in your head, right? Then there's some content of that mental representation that is neither the way the world is, nor the way you're representing it as being, right? And that can be shared by people like you and me. And then we can ask that shared content that's neither the exact representation in your head nor the exact representation in mine. What is that thing? Where is that thing? Etc.
So why do you think that there's the content that's separate from how the world is or how I'm representing it? What motivates that?
Well, so one thing is you and me are both representing the world as containing Sam, right?
Yeah.
So we both have those two representations. So there's something common between those two representations that isn't identical to either of them, because my thought and your thought are not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then we ask, what is it that is the same about them, right? So we can say, oh, I know there's a meaning that they both have, a sense that they both have, right? But then that's going to raise a further question. What is that thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay. You can give answers of that don't involve saying there's some platonic realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the difficulties in formulating those answers are part of the reason why people are tempted to say there's some platonic realm.
Yeah. I see. I mean, I don't think your concept of me and my concept of me are the same concept. I also don't think that my concept of cat and your concept of cat is the same concept.
But there's something shared between us, right?
Yeah, they are very similar. They are very, very similar concepts.
Similar in what respect?
But they're describing mostly the same. They're mostly picking out the same things in the world.
Well, no, but it's not that they're picking up the same thing, because we can both have unicorn concepts that pick out nothing that can be very similar, but it's not in what they pick out that actually exists, right?
Well, I mean,
It's in what they're sort of saying about the world, whether or not the world is that way or not, and what it is that they're trying to do, right? So there's two aspects there.
well, with the unicorn thing, if there was a unicorn that got instantiated, we both agree that it got instantiated. So
There's nothing in reality that we're both picking out. So there's something that's common. It's true that it's true that our thoughts are common to each other. I mean, there's something common between our thoughts, whether unicorns exist or not. So therefore, because the unicorns aren't out there in the world, the thing in virtue of which our two thoughts are similar can't depend on what's in the world.
Yeah, it's the method of trying to pick things in the world that I'm saying is the
right, exactly. So basically there's something that we're attributing to the world, and there's something that we're basically success conditions that we have for whether we've succeeded or not succeeded by attributing that to the world, right? So basically, there's a meaning, what it is that's being said about the world, and there's the success conditions or the truth conditions for that attribution of something to the world. Okay, great. So those are propositions. Now, what is it that basically constitutes those propositions? Because it's not the things out in the world, and it's not our thoughts. So it has to be something that's common to both thoughts.
I mean, I guess what I would say, what makes our cat concept the same is that, like, we are the algorithm that you generate what the success condition would be is like very, very similar, such that like we would agree 99.9999% of the time about what, like, we agree that lamps aren't cats, we agree submarines aren't cats, we agree, and then there's going to be some gray area where like,
okay, but so now you've given an answer.
If I show you a 7 like a feline, or if I show you
I get it.
cat that's an alien, you, like, we might agree about how that is.
Yeah. Just the thing there is, now you're giving an account to try to solve this problem, but it's going to raise further complications. So, for instance, there's a dispositionalism that you've just invoked. So, could it be that I have a thought that invokes a cat concept, even though I'm disposed to misapply my cat concept or my true concept, right? So, like, for instance, like, it could turn out that I just suck at math, right? So what I'm disposed to do is say that 2 plus 200 equals 5 million, right? Now, one thing to say is, you suck at math, so you just got the wrong answer. But then if you're telling me that what I mean and what the success conditions are is just determined by the algorithm that I myself use to grade myself, then if I'm a stubborn guy who won't correct my answer no matter what, that doesn't seem right. Or like, it seems like a lot of my concepts, like my addition concept, are infinite, you know? But like, my brain is finite. And so like, if I actually try to compute, you know, this like 10 to the 9 quadrillion precision decimal, it turns out, no, it's not that I would give the correct answer, it's that my head would explode. And so then you start seeing there's a problem there if the thing that I'm saying, like basically if I'm grounding the meaning and the success conditions, if I'm grounding those entirely in the intrinsic properties of my mental states and the dispositions that I have towards evaluating things, there's a problem, which is that doesn't seem fully adequate.
So like, it seems like it's mostly adequate, and that seems like maybe we can just say that the sort of things that you're bringing up are like details that we worked out later rather than fatal to the theory.
No, but they seem like fundamental problems, because the thing that you were trying to tell me was true with this theory was that what made it true that plus meant plus, you know, that I was correct under the conditions I was correct, was just positions to evaluate myself. And it seems like that's just wrong, like is what these examples are showing.
No, I guess what I'm saying is it's not my evaluation of myself. It's like there are certain rules that exist in my mind that I use to evaluate whether a thing is that thing, and you do or do not have the same rules as me. So I have some some rules for if something's a cat or not. It's got to have fur, a list like 1,000 different properties, and then you have a very, very similar list. And there's it's not my.
Yeah, but that's the problem is that
it's the rules themselves.
It's raising the problem at another level, which is in order for that solution to work, you have to have something that wasn't
Never had one lesson.
that uniquely determined the rule that governed your usage, right? So, like, if I'm coming to you and you're saying, so, like, the famous example here is Kripkenstein's example plus versus quas, right? So, one version of addition is our version of addition. Then there's another version that's exactly the same, except that 40 plus 80 bajillion actually equals 3, rather than 80 bajillion 40. Okay, and the question becomes... And the question becomes, what makes it the case that my concept of addition picks out plus rather than quas, right? And you can say, well, it's that the rule addition is in my head, not the rule quas.
Yeah.
Right? But that's circular.
Wait, why is that circular? Isn't it just a fact with rules in your head? Independent.
No, because rules aren't. So if you think your head is made of particles aren't rules.
Well, I think that rules could be instantiated. Like, I mean,
Well, no, but we can go show you, and that's the problem with this whole dispositionalism, right? Is that no brain is going to actually encode those rules, because it's always going to only going to encode any idealized concept to a finite precision, and it's going to have in the process lots of disposition to do error. So there's a problem of the finitude. Then there's the problem.
Precision may be all what you need.
No, it's not, because the point is that in order for it to be addition, rather than all the possible plus concepts that we could come up with, it would need to settle every case correctly, in line with our intuitions about addition. So if your brain can't encode a definition with that level of complexity, right, it can only settle finitely many cases in whatever its dispositions encoded, then it's going to need to be that the brain is referring to something outside of itself that settles it, rather than that the brain is encoding within itself.
The definition of addition is finally coded. It's not infinitely complex definition
Well, no, it's
that
just,
you cannot
even if you go look at it in a computer, so a computer doesn't encode addition to infinite precision, right? It's going to break down. If you try to have a computer simulate addition, so any computer be a calculator and simulate addition, there's going to be some number, arbitrarily large finite number that you're going to reach, where the computer is not going to actually encode the intuitively correct answer. That's true for any human computer.
Because that's a computer. The computer is not doing abstract addition. It is just encoding it in floating point numbers that, yes, have a certain amount of decimal points.
And so the point is that if you think of the human mind,
we are encoding an infinite number of additions.
but the point is that you don't get to invoke the piano axioms, because the point is how are they encoded by a computational substrate that's physically implemented, right?
Is that you can encode it in a few lines of code.
No, you literally can't.
Literally, a fucking.
No. And this is a well-known.
You have it on a piece of paper.
You don't understand.
You can't do it.
You can write the
That's
words.
first year computer major. He'll do it.
No. You can't, because the problem is you can write the words, but anytime you actually try to use the successor function, right? Again, as we established, in the computer itself, it will only define the successor function validly over a finite domain. So these are yes, of course you're only working with the finite domain.
You are encoding it on a number of rules, right? That is totally given. That's a fact. What you're claiming is that you cannot add forever. that's not the point. Of course, there is infinitely many numbers, so there you can gonna find a number that the computer cannot add because it's just too.
Yeah, but you guys just don't understand the argument.
You can't apply
Those are two different things.
No, but you're not understanding the argument.
You don't have an infinite amount of memory, not this obvious. But
You're not understanding
the piano axioms and successor function is a few lines. It's like
No, but you don't understand the actual definition. So if we actually go to lean and we give a definition with where we're trying to define the successor function, right? We're going to have to use as a primitive. We're going to have to use as a primitive basically something that's only defined to accurately correspond to our intuitions up to a finite domain, even though our actual concept has an infinite domain and would have to be validly defined over that entire domain.
okay, fine. And this is still computers. Yes, computers only have a finite amount of memory. This is not humans. Humans, yes, we can do a finite number of steps, but have you ever heard of mathematical negotiating? I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, so no one's denying.
You're not being abstract.
No one's denying. So this is what the problem is when you jump into a conversation when you don't know the context for the conversation and you're not equipped to have the conversation. So the problem is
Just an ad hominem attack. It's not.
you just don't know the context for the conversation. So no one's denying that humans can do addition.
Computers can do it too. And computers can encode piano rhythms.
They can't encode it except
You can't.
insofar. No, they can't encode it except insofar. Can you please allow me to finish speaking?
You're wrong. You're
No. Can you
Yeah,
please just allow me to finish speaking?
Yeah, please, you gotta chill. One at a time.
They can encode it only insofar as the human takes a symbol and then ascribes to it a meaning, right? So the human is imposing the meaning upon the symbol. And so if the person then says, I agree, every time the computer prints this output, I'm going to interpret this as corresponding to my concept of, say, the successor function. So I just use this symbol, right? So, but that presupposes that the meaning of the concept is rooted in the human, and then the human is projecting it onto the syntactic item that the computer has. So an uninterpreted symbol will have no meaning whatsoever. The computer, though, it would be useful in performing certain operations for us because we can impose interpretations upon its symbols that correspond to our concepts. So we can decide to interpret the syntactic items in line with the concepts that we have.
I mean, going back to your original statement, right? You could encode the piano accents in a computer, and you can understand them regardless of not like humans can understand that, and you only need finally many symbols to understand those axioms.
Never had
Your
one
claims
lesson.
about needing infinity and like my concept of plus needs infinite accuracy. It's nonsense. You don't need infinite accuracy to encode what the plus sign means.
No, but you just
need
ignored
finite-
what I said.
I came back to
No, but what I just said in response to
wait. To your original claim,
you can only encode the piano. No, but I just
two people clearly addition means because you needed infinite number of information to decode.
It's more decorative than it is
You're
functional.
not even understanding the original claim. So here's the claim to the claim is you can't encode an infinite extension for a predicate. Extension only has a finite memory, so you could only define it for a finite domain. And you decide that you have the definition of this infinite extension in your head. I'm going to pretend that it corresponds to this extension. extension, the infinite extension. So then the claim here is, for humans, right, if what you were trying to say was that the neurons in the brain physically encode up to infinites that have an infinite domain, that would be problematic. So therefore, it makes it to where your concept of addition means what it does can't depend upon the finite memory resources that are available to the brain. So it can't depend on that.
It doesn't. You depend. Doesn't mean that you find for every sum. That's obviously true. I mean, I guess you could define them by to give explicit equal for every two possible numbers where
Yes, but you have to define. So when you invoke the plus symbol or the successor symbol, what makes it the case that the successor of 42 is 43 and not 45, right? The meaning of that successor symbol.
The definition of 43.
But the
The
successor
definition
symbol
of 43 is the successor of 42.
but that's the problem is that when you actually define.
You're saying something you don't know about. You're telling me that
How do you think the
43 is the successor of 42.
That's my point. That's what you're not getting.
have infinite precision and
It doesn't work. Calculator will break down once you go past a certain
if you try to complex numbers. It's irrelevant.
No, it's not.
Can't do an infinite number of calculations.
So therefore, what makes it the case for some arbitrary finite number that the correct answer is what it is, can't be that the brain is disposed to arrive at that answer.
You don't know mathematics, it's axiomatic.
So now,
No,
now
but that's
yeah,
my
but one
point.
second, Ethan. CM, now that you're caught up in the conversation, we were here like 10 minutes ago before you joined. Let's let him continue the conversation with Sam. You guys jumped in at a point and started contending some other thing that he wasn't claiming. Now you're back to he was from the beginning. So just listen a little bit more before you jump into conversations. It's not really constructive. We wasted the last 10 minutes. We can let him say everything wrong stuff. He didn't say anything wrong. You just weren't listening. You just reached the point now. You reached the point now that he was at 10 minutes ago. You reached the point now. You reached the point now that he was at 10 minutes ago. So if you guys can mute up for a second, we can hear where this. We can hear the rest of the context of this. We can actually hear the rest of the conversation and see what was being discussed.
Never have one lesson.
Point of moderation. Everyone, please vote on the poll so that we get some ideas to what the common for the lay folk are getting out of this. So please vote. Go ahead. Who's next?
I just want to say the context of the conversation was we're debating what propositions were, and I was saying I was kind of giving this idea of like you have world states and you have like representations of the world like maps and territory, and then anything else besides there being maps and territory is adding epicycles that you don't need. And Ethan was trying to say no, we maybe do need it, but there's something in common about the representations. Then what is they have in common? And I was saying the algorithm that generates that it's the same representation would be similar, like that. Is it got its problems? So it's kind of where we were in better.
Yeah, where we were exactly was I was walking through something called the rule following paradox, which is basically just the idea that what makes it the case that a certain thought, right, that encodes a rule, what makes it the case that one rule determines
Never
it's
had
successful or not,
one
versus a
lesson.
rule that's very similar except slightly deviant from the rule that is intuitively acceptable. It can't actually be the intrinsic properties of the mental states encoding the dispositions to give the right answer, because you don't have enough precision with the finite resources that you have available to encode that. So therefore, there needs to be some kind of external reference to a standard rather than...
Can it just be that both plus and plus are like it's undetermined which concept we have in our mind, and that like they're both encoded by the rules that we have? Is that?
I mean, first is... So there are more problems that are going to arise if you take that route. But first, let's just acknowledge how counterintuitive that is. Like, one thing that seems very true is that for my addition concept, that there's a uniquely correct answer to what the sum is for each combination of, two integers, right?
Your addition concept is not axiomatic or well-defined. This is why it's nonsense.
Can you please stop interjecting? You just have no mathematical literacy at all, so can we just move on?
I don't. Okay.
The joke is so you're saying that you can add two numbers and get two different results?
I'm saying the opposite of that. It's just crazy that, like, Dunning-Kruger in the room is unbelievable.
But what you're saying, calculators shouldn't work. What mathematicians are doing is literal nonsense.
Yeah, CM, you gotta stop, buddy. It's really getting annoying now.
Nobody's fucking talking to you, bro. You're a fucking moron. You're literally brain dead. Nobody's talking to you. Fucking, this guy, again, I don't think, have you taken computer science class? Seriously?
Yes.
You know what axioms are?
Yes.
Okay, so then what's the problem?
The question we have is not whether axioms exist. It's a question about what makes it to where the axioms mean what they do. So it's a metaphysical question that we're asking. And it's not a question.
They're well defined. They have to be.
No. But meaning, right? The meaning that they have when we appeal to it, it bottoms out somewhere invoking a primitive, right? So for instance, if you've ever gone to a logic class, if you go to the logic class and they give you the disjunction symbol and they're telling you the semantics for disjunction, there's going to come a point in time where they're either going to assert that it's primitive or they're going to give you a circular definition, right? Because then that's true for all axioms, is you bottom out somewhere where there's some primitive concept that you're employing where you can't give a further definition in terms of something more basic than it, right? Then there comes up a question, which is...
They're trying to go now deep.
Yeah, but Ethan, do you have a calculator? Does your calculator work? Come on, man. Just tell me if your calculator works. Shut up, CM. You're not even following the conversation. Nobody is questioning whether calculator.
I'm not following the conversation. The fact that calculators work. Again, do you know like the P versus NP problem? There are NP complete problems, NP complex problems that can be solved in polynomial time. Meaning
that's completely irrelevant.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
He just wanted to say the word polynomial so he could sound smart.
So what you're talking about right now is computational complexity.
That's what I'm talking about.
So the asymptotic complexity of decision problems has nothing to do with this conversation.
These are just basic problems. Think of Sudoku puzzles. The whole point is basically the n by n grid of a Sudoku puzzle can get really.
Okay, do you know what a decision problem is?
But it's fast. If it's hard to solve.
Do you know?
Sure. If you solve an n by n,
do you know?
That might take a long time.
Do you know what a decision problem is?
The solution is fast.
Do you know what a decision problem is? Do you know what a decision problem is? Do you know what a decision problem is?
Yes.
What is it?
I mean, a decision problem. The fuck are you talking about? Like,
yeah, just give me the answer to the
traveling salesman or fucking.
No, like a definition, not an example.
Regardless, that's not what this is about.
Okay, so yeah, it's part of the definition of P equals NP.
P versus NP is about, again,
the decision problem is just a decision problem is a problem. Yeah, the point is a decision problem is a computational problem with a yes/no answer. So if you look at it, validation, verification, right, for non-deterministic polynomial time corresponds to the decision problem, right?
Sorry, are you gonna say it again? You're gonna
So verifying whether you have a solution, verifying whether you have a solution is a decision problem, right? That's just, it's just a problem with a yes/no answer. Either yes, you have a solution, no, you don't.
Like that's what I'm talking about.
You can't just
verification does not
right. But you just dismissed my reference. Okay.
Well, it sounded like Vito, like you're saying that you cannot define the plus correctly. Like you cannot have a precise definition of plus. So is that your claim that we cannot define what plus means?
No, my claim is not that we can't define it. I'm saying there's a certain way that we can't define it, which doesn't mean it can't be defined at all.
Yeah, I invited them all to the giant kid over Christmas downstairs.
Okay, so plus could be well defined, so that all of the people who understand the definition agree and understand the same definition. Right?
Yes, that's my point.
Well, it sounded that you were claiming that there was like a quasi plus that you don't know which one I'm actually thinking. Like you can never know.
Right. My claim is that what makes it true that my thought is about plus rather than quus isn't about the intrinsic properties of my thought, but is instead about some plus concept that's extrinsic to my mind, that my mind is referring to. And that concept, it's the fact that I'm referring to that plus rather than quus. It's the fact that I'm referring to plus that makes it to where the success conditions for my thought are what they are, rather than that I have certain dispositions encoded in my mind. So I was giving Sam a motivation for thinking that the meaning of these concepts wasn't something in my head, but was instead something that was a relation between the thought in my head and something outside of my head. So it's an argument for a Platonism. That's what I was giving him motivation for.
Yeah, don't we have?
Oh, this Huxley sound.
Like when I say I'm gonna go out the door, like I might be referring to the object of the door with the the hinges, or like the space that the door takes up, or I could be talking about like I don't know, like a couple feet. Like it seems kind of ambiguous when I say door. I can mean a few different things, and this happens all the time with polysemy, and just our language is like this. So if that's how it works for door, why can't it work that way for arithmetic? Is there something like really?
It doesn't work for door either.
Do you not think that when I say like I'm going to leave?
Man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will, take your fill and will of love as he will, when, where, and with whom he will. Man has the right to kill those who would what these right to slaves shall serve. Love is the law, love and the will. The law of the strong.
Ethan, word salad on precision. This is what Ethan word salad on.
but to do thy will. To that and no other shall say nay. Every man and every woman is a star. There is no God but man. The rights of man. Master Therion, Freya Murderao, Alistair Crowley, Alistair Crowley, the Master Alistair Crowley. Man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will, take your fill and will of love as he will, when, where, and with whom he will. Man has the right to kill those who would for these rights slaves shall serve. Love is the law, love of the will. The law of the strong, this is our law and the joy of the world. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thou hast the right but to do thy will. Do that and no other shall say nay. Every man and every woman is a star. There is no God but man. The rights of man. Master Therion, Freya Murderao, Alistair Crowley, Alistair Crowley, the Master Alistair Crowley. Man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will, take your fill and will of love as you will, when, where, and with whom ye will. Man has the right to kill those who would want these rights slaves shall serve. Love is the law, love under will. The law of the strong, this is our law and the joy of the world. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thou hast no right but to do thy will. To that and no other shall say nay. Every man and every woman is a star. There is no God but man. The rights of man. Master Therion, Freya Murderao, Alistair Crowley, Alistair Crowley, the Master Alistair Crowley. face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will, take your fill and will, love as you will, where and with whom you will. Man has the right to kill those who would thwart these rights. The slave shall serve, love is the law, love under will. The law is strong, this is our law, and the joy of the world. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thou hast no right but to do thy will, do that, and no other shall say nay. Every man and every woman is a star. There is no God but man. The rights of man, Master Therian, Fred and Perturabo, Alistair Crowley, the Master, Alistair Crowley. Man has a right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do. To work as he will, to pay as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will, take your fill and will, love as you will, when, where, and with whom you will. Man has the right to kill those who would thwart these rights. The slave shall serve, love is the law, love under will. Time drifts slow like hum. In the dark, it starts so small. A spark so faint, it's barely there at all. Tiny hands